where I was born was a very tiny village with 5 families. This could be seen as a very negative thing because I didn't have any schools to go to. But if you make the most of whatever there is, actually challenges become opportunities. So for me, not having a school turned out to be the best thing for my childhood. I didn't have to get into the mumbo-jumbo of textbooks, memorization, and so on till about 9. I learned directly from nature, from people, in my own mother tongue, which is one of the best things that could happen to a child. I tell my friends that when you were learning about roots, shoots, and leaves from pages of textbooks, I was learning them, putting a seed in the ground, seeing the roots go down, shoots come up, without having to memorize L-E-A-F, leaf, and L-E-A-V-E-S, leaves. All that takes away the fun of knowing more about these things in nature. So this problem turned out to be a great opportunity or a great thing to happen to my childhood. Later, I was dragged into a school at 9, and there ended my true fun learning. I had to cope with the schools. And at around 18, I faced another challenge, which again I'm so very grateful for. Around that time, like all young people, I had to choose what I was going to study. My friends were very sure of doing medicine or engineering. I didn't know why I would do that until I found a chapter in physics in 11th grade on optics, lights, that fascinated me, about concave mirrors and convex mirrors and lenses, and I wanted to learn more about that and pursue it, to do things in Ladakh, which is so cold, to guide light into dark spaces that could be warmed, and you could grow things in a place that is cold like Ladakh. And therefore, I started asking around for how and where I can study more about it. After asking many people, an uncle of mine said, you learn more about it in mechanical engineering. And that was the day I made up my mind. And 1 year later, I was in the engineering college. The first year was peaceful. But at the end of that, we had to choose our streams. And you would know what I wanted to choose. But somehow my father asked me what I was choosing, and I said mechanical engineering, and he asked why, and I said I love these lenses and mirrors, and he said, don't be ridiculous, you don't choose it for those reasons. Ladakh has no scope for mechanical engineering, you have to choose civil. I could not believe that I had to choose for something called scope of things. So I said, no, I'm going to do mechanical. Civil, he said. Mechanical, I insisted. Civil, mechanical. And at the end of that exchange, he said, if you do that, you'll do it on your own expense. Don't expect anything from me. That was a big challenge. I think, fathers are not bad. They don't mean you ill. But they are a good test of your determination, I would say. If you are not clear, then it's better they prevail. But if you are clear and take your own path and succeed, they're happy again. So I could have given in. That was perhaps what he wanted. But I decided to not switch for something like a scope in employment. And some voice inside me stood me up and said, thank you very much. And I walked out of the house. But on the steps outside, I was wondering, now what? How do I finance my 3 years of engineering? That was a big challenge to give up or to take on. I decided to take on. And that was the best thing I feel I've done in my life. To finance my engineering then, I thought of what I could do, considered various things. I wasn't strong to move bricks and rocks, but I thought I can teach. So I decided to go back to Ladakh in vacations and teach, mainly to finance my own engineering. Back in Ladakh, in the vacation, when rest of my college went on an industrial tour, I had no money for my next meal, but again, some voice inside was ready for taking on things. I went to a hotel owner and said, I'm going to run a coaching system. Can you lease your hotel? And strangely, for a 19-year-old, the hotel owner said, yeah, sure, take it. It was off-season, so he was gracious to give the hotel on lease for 3 months without any money. He didn't know that I didn't have money for the next meal. I went ahead and hired some stenographers, put up posters all over the town, and started a very interesting, innovative coaching system. And students started pouring in. It was so cheap, 5 times cheaper than anything there was. And within 1.5 months, I had wanted to earn for that year's expenses, but I had earned for all the 3 years of engineering, something that would come to roughly 4 lakhs of today for a 19-year-old was not bad. And while my aim was to finance my engineering, this experience changed my life forever. For one thing, it showed me that money was not the biggest thing. You can make money in 2 months for 3 years. There are more interesting, substantial things to do in life. On the other hand, I saw that the students who were failing en masse, 95% of them were failing, were actually so good, bright, if taught the way they learn. And I thought, rather than adding another engineer to the long queues, I should work on bringing some reforms in the education system and unleashing these bright minds, freeing them. And that was a time when I went through this realization that in life it's not only about what I need, but what needs me also. So I kept my lenses and mirrors on the back burner for a while and started working mainly on education reforms. I will now take the help of some images, because what I'm talking about is a little, or actually a lot, different from what you would all be experiencing in the plains of India. So the pictures, I hope, will speak more than my 1,000 words, and therefore, this is the slide changer, right? So this is Ladakh in the top north of our country. I'll share with you my story of facing challenges, innovating in adversities, in harsh climates. As you can see, as you approach Ladakh by a flight, this is the landscape, or rather the moonscape, many would call, that you see, totally barren. It almost looks uninhabitable until you look carefully, and then you see the green oasis. Life should not be possible here, actually. With temperatures like these and precipitation less than 100 millimeters, people have carved out canals using water that is not even today's water, fossilized water from tens of thousands of years, called glaciers, is what feeds the life and possibility of people here. This is a typical village which shows the ingenuity of our ancestors who carved rocks to bring water to deserts and greened them and lived in harmony with nature. So in these harsh environments, people have not only survived, but a whole colorful civilization has thrived with its own music, dance, spirituality, livelihoods in harmony with nature. But up in the mountains, Trans-Himalayan, life is very different from the rest of the subcontinent, and we become a tiny microscopic minority, not only linguistic, ethnic, but environmentally, and things that work in other places don't even work here. This problem of being a minority is biggest for little children who speak only their mother tongue, know the mountains, but not beyond, and yet the textbooks come transplanted from a place that has none of these, and children suffer a lot because of the context, because of the language. And when I came face to face with this education system, it was a scenario like this, where every year 95% used to fail. Schools often used to have 0% result. And the system blamed the students for that rather than introspecting, because in any system, railways or car making, software making, if 95% of the products fail, then it is for the system to reform, introspect, rectify. But here, it was the students that were blamed by society and the system. And we had teachers who didn't understand the context in the mountains and the language problems, because they came from across the mountains from Kashmir or Jammu, and often not only blamed the students, but made them feel that they can't do anything. For example, some would devise even pseudo-scientific reasons when they couldn't communicate and get results. They would say, you all children from Ladakh can never do well because you don't have oxygen in the air. Yeah? Now a child can't fabricate oxygen, so they may give up. And that was how it was in those days. So to reform this, initially we were naive and we started teaching them close to the 10th grade exams so that they could do better than this, which worked. They were doing better, but very soon we realized that if we do this, we would be doing this for another 50 years, and the system would keep producing broken products for us to mend. That is no charity, which makes them dependent. In fact, if we go to the root of the problem and rectify the system, then these products won't break in the first place, and you don't have to do the charity. So therefore, we decided we should go and work in the government schools in villages, which is where the children start. And government schools, because we have always believed that that's what builds the country. Most of our children are in rural government schools, and unless we take care of them, India can never do well. Even if 5% of our schools are better than American schools, with 95% of our schools worse off than sub-Saharan African schools, we can never compete with other countries. So government schools is where we wanted to change things. And this was done by collaborating with various actors. With government, we worked, and with the victims of the system we worked, because they can become a very powerful force, an ants' army, even if they are helpless otherwise. So we started taking one government school to make a prototype. Our strategy always has been to do a small intervention, test it out as a prototype, and then scale it up. So in one school, we tested out by changing the textbooks to make them more contextual, training the teachers so they can take care of the children in better, friendlier ways, because the textbooks made no sense in Ladakh. So children found it difficult. For example, you have A for apple, B for ball. Makes sense because apple and ball makes it easier for children to understand abstract squiggles, codes like A and B, which grown-ups have made up. But if the same is just transplanted to a cold place with -30 temperatures, then it goes on to become F for fan. Doesn't make F any simpler in a -30 winter when children are given such examples. Goes on for T for train, S for ship at 14,000 feet. Children are more confused by such examples. So we started redoing all the textbooks and then taking this message that change can be brought. In this school, when things started working, then these students who were victims of the system who had failed went on campaigns to all directions, all over Ladakh, even 1 week of trekking in snowbound mountains to spread the message that you can make your government schools better. Our strategy was that it should be driven by the people. If people's priorities change, then governments can bring policies. Otherwise, if people's priorities are just subsidies and kerosene and rice, you cannot bring changes in education, even if the leader wants to. So changing grassroots people's priority and programming actually is the lasting way. So therefore, we have believed in changing people's priority rather than, say, a commissioner or a minister, because if the people are not changed, then the next commissioner or minister will get it back to the old thing again. But if people's priorities change, then any leader will have to follow what the people want. So with these programs, together with the government and village communities, things started changing and results started showing slowly. So from 5% consistent, it went to some 55% in few years, and then slowly to 75%. This proved, I say half-jokingly, a great scientific fact that it was not oxygen behind the failure of students in Ladakh. Yeah? It was other than oxygen. Now we had the challenge of the rest. 25% is smaller than 95%, but it is not small. Even 1% is not small, especially if that 1% touches you or your child. Then 1% is very big. Otherwise, it's just a statistics fact. So therefore, why should anybody come out with a feeling of failure? So we started working on those who were still failing. And to take that challenge on, we conceived a special school that would teach in ways that they learn rather than, if they didn't learn the way we taught. And anyway, we have always believed that classrooms with 8-hour lectures and notes and chalk and talk is not normal. For human beings to learn that way is not normal. We humans have not evolved over millions of years to learn through paper and lectures. Actually, if you look at past, it's only in the last 300 years that these kind of schools have come up. Over millions of years, human young ones have evolved to learn out in nature, in action, engaged. As hunter-gatherers, our children were by the side of their parents facing challenges in nature and even dangerous situations. And nature has, through evolution, gifted us with lots of energy, our young ones, to deal with these. As farmers, again, they were in the thick of action. Only in the last 300 years, we cage them in boxes and make them sit and memorize and things. Of course, the energy that nature has gifted them for the millions of years of evolution then comes out in ugly forms, which, by the way, is called teenager rage rebellion. It is nothing to me but this release of energy, which could have been used for their physical, engaging, learning experience. And therefore, we started with a different approach to learning for these students. And what better than engaging their energies, giving them responsibilities and respect, than to create a school with them or through them. So in 94, we started a school that was to be a different school for these different special students. Otherwise, we never believed in running parallel systems. We have always believed in strengthening the existing systems. So on this desert in the middle of really nowhere, away from all the towns, we started this special school. And with the students, we camped and designed and built the school itself. After about 5 years, we had built this alternative school. It's a different kind of school, as you will see. To begin with, as was mentioned, this is a school where the criteria of admission is not distinctions and marks, but that you have failed. Yeah? And it is also an experience in learning for grown-ups how to tread gently on this planet, living with small ecological footprint. So this whole school is built with natural materials like earth or mud. The sand and clay that you see on the slopes, in a way, change shape to become buildings. And then add to that sun, which is so abundant. There's actually nobody who cannot afford sun, which shines above everybody's head, and soil, which you find under everybody's feet. So combining the two with some science, which is what it should be useful for, to build a habitat that could make us comfortable even in -20 winters. And I'll come to more about this, but this was a school where we wanted the children to engage in challenges, in responsibilities, and we thought what better than making them run the school itself. And therefore, this school is run like a little country with a little government of 2 months duration. So the students elect a government, and that government plans, sets goals, and executes them through the 2 months. And at the end of it, they have to present in the parliament, be answerable. These are life skills that cannot be learned from pages of books. Only by practicing, you will be ready for the world. So this engages all that energy that nature has gifted human young ones from millions of years in a modern way. And the responsibilities and challenges that they are given are not mock case studies from books, but real. So some of the students would be taking care of all the cows that supply all the milk for the campus, but she would be using the mathematics that she learned in her class, for example, statistics, to track the productivity of the cows, using all the bar charts, pie charts, and average and mean and so on, through the different seasons, how they produce and so on. Similarly, others would take care of all the solar cooking devices there, and yet others would produce organic vegetables, and yet learn economics by producing vegetables and selling it to the kitchen, and in the process learning profit, loss, and all that. Others would take care of the power plant, which is fully solar, and that's the only energy we have on campus, and greenhouses that produce all the vegetables. Similarly, abstract topics like that bother children in schools, like germ theory, would be applied to some use. For example, in the apricot season, apricots have a shelf life of 1 week, but using germ theory, they make a lot of jam in a jam making festival, and that preserves it for 1 year or more. And they produce hundreds of bottles, consume half of it through the year, and have to sell the rest. And to sell, they have to plan, market, advertise, and with the profits, while learning economics, with the profits they go on a tour to the plains of India, coming down through the hills, they learn geography, and then they would share their experience on the campus radio or campus newspaper, like real world works. And some of them then carry forward these experiences to make it a livelihood. So some who were working on jam became jam makers, manufacturers for Ladakh and for outside to the industry. They supply pulp. Others who were handling visitors have become travel companies. This one particularly well written about in media also, perhaps India's first all-women's travel company with women clients, women cooks, women guides, porters, woman owner. And others would go back to add value to the products they have in their own regions, thereby making learning meaningful also. Innovations at this campus revolve around the mountain context like earth, sun, ice, and fire. And like I explained, earth is the material with which we build. As our ancestors built for thousands of years, there are earth buildings from 1,000 years ago in Ladakh, and there's nothing wrong with earth. But when we were doing this, we were often ridiculed, going back to some primitive material when it was the age of cement. We didn't see anything wrong with earth and anything great about cement. Cement is known to have a life of 60 to 100 years, whereas earth buildings have lasted for thousands of years. And with some science, you can make it better. So why not choose this? And then sun, as I said, is what can make these buildings even better than our ancestors thought. Because with sun, you can use passive solar technologies. Yeah. So you can see how the chapter on science in their high school book comes alive. Every winter, this greenhouse comes down on a building that is as our ancestors built, but we add to that what they didn't have, transparent materials. And with this greenhouse, the chapter on heat comes alive. When the sun heats the walls and things in the greenhouse, air gets heated and rises. That's convection, which bothers them otherwise in exams, and goes into the upper windows, which are opened by the student who is responsible every morning and closed every evening. So the hot air rises, goes in, delivers its heat to the fat walls, becomes cool and dense, and is pushed into the greenhouse again to continue the cycle all day without any machines, fans, energy needs. It's a natural convection cycle, which is what they have to study in 10th grade. Similarly, conduction, heating the wall surface here at midday, slowly molecule by molecule conducts into the inner surface by midnight when you need heat, and the wall radiates the heat inside. So all the convection, conduction, radiation come alive to keep them warm and not just bother in exams. And that's how these things become unforgettable. We blame them for forgetting their lessons, but they are so forgettable. So while these things were done in '96, this campus became an off-grid, zero-energy campus. When these terms were not coined, when it was quite against the tide, it took some 20 years for the world to catch up and understand why natural materials are going to save us, save the planet. Energies like this, solar, are going to save the planet. And by 2016, as I said, the world started acknowledging this. And in 2016, we were given the Terra Award at the World Earth Congress for one of the best earth buildings in the world at this campus. And similarly, in the solar field, the sun is the main source of energy, free for all, available for all. At this campus, cooking with parabolic mirrors and focusing it on the pot happens with sun. Vegetable production, even in snowy winters, happen with sun. Lighting naturally happens with sun. Electricity that is needed, sun. Water heating with student-made contraptions happen with sun. Lifting water to green this plateau happens with sun. Even the cows at this campus live in solar-heated cow sheds. We thought 15 years ago, people have benefited from sun, why not animals? So we built together with the students a solar-heated cow